You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Oh, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. What? Me worry? Never. Not in the world we live in. And if I do start to worry, I just grab my pipe and take time for hemp. And if you want to see more programs like this, we would appreciate it if you hit the like button below. And if you haven't, subscribe to our channel and share us with your friends. You are watching us all around the world on BitChute, Rumble, YouTube. You also find us on iHeart, iTunes, and Spotify, and many other social outlets that people get together and talk about how wonderful this wonderful, wonderful, amazing plant hemp is. Today on the program, my joint host, Al Byrne, who's also a writer of a book, has been blessed to be able to have a wonderful Canadian guest come onto our show. But before we get to that point, Al, why don't you tell us about your book that you've got available on Amazon?
Thanks, Casper. Casper usually gives me just a few seconds at the end of the show to get this in, so I appreciate it to be at the beginning here. But yeah, I wrote a book. It's called For Country and Cannabis. It's a story of my progression with cannabis through my military years, 24 of them in the Navy, and then afterwards running normal, establishing Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, co-founding Patients Out of Time, and all of the progression. Why did that happen? Why did this go? Who didn't help? Who did help? What was the problems? What was the successes? But essentially, when we started, there was no medical cannabis discussion in the United States, for that matter, the world. And now there is. And that's what that book is about. How that was done, why it was done, and who did it. It's if you really have an interest in cannabis, and it's full of information. It's 360 pages long. And I put everything in there that I've ever learned in some sort of story format or some way. It's worth a read. I know I wrote it, and I'm going to say that, but it is. And so with that, we have a Canadian co-host, another Al.
Well,
no. What?
It's not co-host. It's not co-host. It's joint host. And remember, anytime you hear the word joint on the big broadcast, hit your pipes, your bongs, your vaporizers, and take time for hemp. I didn't mean to interrupt there, my joint host, Al Byrne. I'll let you get back to your joint introduction.
My apologies. I didn't know I screwed up that bad, but I'm reprimanded. I get it. Yeah. So we have a Canadian joint host. His name is Al. This is where I was interrupted. His last name is Graham. And I'm sure he can just push a button and show up.
There I am.
Yeah, there we go.
Thanks, Al. Yes, and you see that beside my name, I have joint host on my description as well. So it's it's great to be with you guys today.
And you work jointly on a thing called Pace Radio up in Canada, don't you, Al?
Yes, PACE Radio. PACE stands for People Advocating Cannabis Education. And just so you know, we also do psychedelics as well.
Well, and I think, unless I'm mistaken, our guest today, let me howl at the moon, is from Canada as well. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. She's from the East Coast. She's a friend of mine. She's also a co-host and a host of programming on the PACE Radio Network as well.
And her name is Cynthia Howell, right?
Yes, it is. And why don't I introduce her to everybody? Cindy's journey has been shaped by personal experiences with trauma, addiction, a deep search for meaning. She's overcoming significant challenges. She has found healing through cannabis, which has guided her through sobriety and later through transformation, power of psychedelic medicine. I like to welcome, as we call her, Rev Cindy, to the Time for Hemp broadcast.
Welcome to our joint chat.
Every time you say join, I got to take a draw. Yes.
That's right. Exactly. I'm going to move you around there. There we go. Get everybody in position. There we go. So how you doing, Cindy?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Al, and Casper?
Well, I take it you didn't wake up one day at the age of like 14 and go, wow, golly gee, I think I'll be a cannabis activist when I grow up. Let me study for that. So why don't you tell us how you began your journey?
I have had a life of trauma. I spent, I had a life of trauma. I had childhood sexual trauma when I was very, very young. That led to a life of addiction in my teens. I joined the Army at 17, trying to get away from my life. And the Army for women in the late 80s was not necessarily a good place to go, especially one that was traumatized and alcoholic. So my time in the Army didn't go as I had planned, and I ended up traumatized there. And I left. I fell heavily into addiction for a while, moved around the country. I eventually came home. I ended up married to a guy who, on our wedding night, started the abuse. I stayed with him for a few years, and I finally kicked him to the curb, which led to more addiction, which led to more trauma, which led to more addiction. And I ended up in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and I ran the trap house. My house was the house you came to when you wanted the good drugs. And then one day I decided I was going to move back to my hometown, which is Windsor, Nova Scotia. And on the day I moved home, which was April 19th, 2008, I quit the street drugs. That was it. I was done. I didn't do anymore. I just quit them. But pharmaceuticals took their place. I thought I was okay because it's pharmaceuticals. The doctor gave it to me, right?
Right.
And then eventually I ended up on 9 different medications. And I was betrothed to them. I lived for them. And one day I walked into an illegal cannabis dispensary here in Nova Scotia. I was high on whatever pharmaceuticals I was taking. And somebody in there recognized that. And he said to me, Cindy, he goes, I want you to take these canna caps. These, it's cannabis oil. That's all it is. It's perfectly fine. And take these twice a day. Go home and take these twice a day for a week and then come back and tell me how that worked for you. I was using cannabis and mushrooms during all of this time, but with the wrong intention. So when this gentleman gave me these caps, I paid for them, but he sent me home. It was almost like a prescription from a doctor. On day 3, I woke up and I took my canna cap and I didn't touch my pharmaceuticals. And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together yet. And it was probably about 5 or 6 hours later, and the withdrawal effects hit me. And I realized that, holy shit, I didn't take my meds this morning. Like I can swear on this show. Can I swear?
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? And I realized in that what the fuck moment that I didn't need them if cannabis could do this for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So fast forwarding, 8 months later, I was the manager of cannabis dispensary, and I was off all of the pharmaceutical medications.
Nice.
Yeah, I was still a cigarette smoker. No, sorry, I had just quit smoking cigarettes at that point in time, but I was still an alcoholic. Which eventually, I just got sick and tired of being numb, which was weird because I had done the drugs to be numb.
Yeah.
And that just led me on an incredible journey. I decided to give up alcohol. I became completely sober, no cigarettes, no street drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes, no, none of it. I mean, I gave it all up and I concentrated on cannabis. I eventually found psychedelics through cannabis. I found mushrooms, and mushrooms led me to other psychedelics. And that led me to a profound healing that I'm not even sure if I can put into words. So yeah, it's a little bit of my story quickly on how I came to cannabis and what it did for me and how it got me sober.
Well, that brought you to cannabis, but what made you start standing up and speaking out loud and risk being put into a spotlight where a lot of people, including authorities that are against these types of activities, would suddenly pay a lot of attention to you? I mean, it's one thing to quietly do that and go, oh, well, you know, cannabis heals me, and cannabis and mushrooms, they're great, and they've calmed me down, and just tell your brothers and sisters and go on with your life. It's another to get up and, like you, and be an outspoken advocate, and that's quite another big step.
For me, it wasn't. For me, it was I found sobriety and I found healing. And
let me interrupt, Reverend. That's a hell of a story.
Oh, thank you.
I believe every word of it. But I got questions because there's people in the audience. I know the answer. I'm going to ask her questions and I know the answer. But people in the audience are going, hey. And so I have two questions. The first one would be, you've given up street drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, etc., cigarettes. How hard was it?
How hard?
Yeah.
It was incredibly hard. I had tried a number of times to quit cigarettes with no avail. I always succumbed to the addiction. But when I decided I was done, when that willpower hit me, the sweats and the shakes and the vomiting and the headaches, they paled in comparison to the willpower I had to be sober. And cannabis gave me that willpower. Yeah. And to answer your question, Casper, the reason why I stood up and became an activist is because cannabis helped me get sober. And if cannabis can do that, and I knew other people in the same situation, how the hell could I keep my mouth shut?
Yeah. Sharing one story helps to educate other people.
Yeah,
is something I've always believed, and there's no doubt about that as far as I'm concerned. So now as far as with the cannabis end of things, back then, cannabis wasn't always something that was you could just go to the corner store and get, right? And actually now at the corner store, as you mentioned, you fight addiction of alcohol. For you to go to a legal store in your province, you have to walk through the alcohol store to get to the cannabis store.
Yeah. Legally here in Nova Scotia or in Canada, you can only go to one of the government approved legal stores. Every province is different in what they've decided to do. And here in Nova Scotia, they have decided to put the cannabis in a closet in the back of the liquor store, literally. So yeah, for me to go get legal cannabis at a dispensary, at a legal store, I have to walk through a whole store of alcohol.
But back then, when you were using cannabis in order to deal with your addictions, sourcing it, I don't know what type of situation you would have been in, but that can also be hard for somebody who's fighting, the demons to deal with addiction.
Yeah, well, back then, your street dealers, like, I mean, they didn't just have cannabis if you go to them. We were lucky enough here in Nova Scotia that we had a lot of places pop up prior to legalization. You know, we had a few chains, like, I mean, you know, our capital city here in Nova Scotia, you know, and its, you know, surrounding areas had, I don't know, a dozen or so illegal cannabis dispensaries. Medical cannabis dispensaries is what they call themselves. So using those was really great. And of course, I signed up for the medical cannabis program here in Canada. So I, you know, got a licensed producer, and they sent me my prescription every month.
Yeah.
Well, I do have this question, because I have noticed some things in your background, ma'am. Excuse me, I've done a background check here. And it seems to me that you are still pushing addictions where you're at. And doesn't that make you feel bad? I mean, after all, I saw that you pushed one of my addictions, chocolate. And you do chocolate infused, and chocolate hemp infused. And that's like, oh my gosh. If I walk through a store and I see chocolate, it's like, oh, I'm face first into it. I can't leave it alone. I can't. Well,
my chocolate is different than what you're going to find at the store, though. I work with one of the medicines I work with and I facilitate is called cacao, which is the theobroma plant, which is where we get chocolate. But I work with the chocolate that comes off the tree. It's actually a fruit. So when you're eating chocolate, you're eating your fruit, just so you know.
Good.
But when the chocolate comes off the tree, and we have the cacao that they literally scrape out of these beans, that's the chocolate I work with, and I infuse that. Now, so it's actually healthy for you and heart healing.
Yeah, I see in your information that you also ran delivering cannabis-based medicines, which I believe included a chocolate, that award-winning chocolate treat or something.
I've won 2 awards for my cannabis chocolates over the years, which is just kind of exciting. And yeah, I did I delivered cannabis. I drove the province during COVID, when everybody was scared and everybody was locked in their houses and nobody could get out for food or even go to the pharmacy for their other medications. And people were finding themselves without anything. I took donations of cannabis and food, and I literally drove the province, and I did deck drops, and I dropped off medicine and food for everybody that needed it.
Now, do you do inter-country shipping?
No, but I can invite you here to Canada and have some ready when you get here.
Okay, groovy. All right.
Good stuff. And what were those infused chocolates?
What did I win with?
Yeah, like what were they? Did you create something fancy?
Well, I worked with another lady, and what we created was a peanut butter chocolate cake pop. Where I don't like cake pops. I find that if you add too much of the icing to it, it tastes like unbaked cake. So we had a chocolate cake, and we used peanut butter to kind of make it, and then we dipped that in chocolate, and we made it all fancy. And they were actually very beautiful. And we didn't win. We came in second, but we got medals and the whole bit.
Yeah, good stuff.
Canadian Reese Cup, yeah. That's what it is. Listen, now let me ask you a vet question.
Sure.
As I understand the situation with veterans in Canada and cannabis, is that a veteran with the right prescription, if that's the right word up there, can get cannabis from the country delivered to their home free.
Yes. Once a veteran here in Canada has been approved, and I'm going through the process now. Once we are approved, and we have a legal prescription for cannabis, they guarantee you that you're going to get 3 grams a day. So they will send you 90 grams a month. And you can fight to have that increased. Most of the veterans I know around here get 10 grams a month. So what is that, 300 grams a month that they get delivered to them, and they get to choose. So they get to pick their delivery system, which licensed producer or supplier they go with. So that's kind of
strains.
What's that?
That's what I had heard. Now you're going through the process. That was going to be my next question. How bad or how heavy the process? Is it doable?
It's annoying. I mean, this is the government, Canadian VAC. And, as soon as you make the application, they cover you for certain things. So they will cover all of my mental health appointments. And they will also cover all of my mental health medicines that come from the pharmacy. They do not put cannabis in with that right now. So I had to fill out an extensive, 5 million page thing with my psychiatrist. And we sent it in. They have had it since November, and I am still waiting on them to decide.
Wow. Still, Here we are 4 months later.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned
the average, though.
Now you mentioned your psychiatrist. What you haven't mentioned is as far as you talked about trauma, but you've been diagnosed with.
I am diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It started when I was 4.5 years old. So we've been able to determine where it started. And I was 49. So that tells you how long I suffered. I was 49 when cannabis helped me find sobriety, and then helped me find psychedelics.
See, that's another thing that you just brought up that I want to emphasize. I was once a counselor for the Agent Orange program down here in the U.S. and the VA. I got paid for both of them. But what we found out there was that, first of all, post-traumatic stress rather than disorder. We never really, me and the guys and the counselors never saw it as a disorder. It was a reaction post-trauma. Yeah. The other thing we found out as counselors after a bit, we asked more questions later, but just what you brought up, that we found that something on the order of 65% of the vets that we were dealing with, they were all combat vets from Vietnam, had been traumatized before they ever went in the military.
Yeah.
So, you are an example of the vast majority that, and there's a couple of things there. If you think about it, Vietnam vets didn't get any kind of counseling at all for their problems for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, you're looking at a lady here who didn't get any counseling for what, 40?
45.
So I mean, think about these issues, and again, we're military talk here, but all kinds of people get post-traumatic stress, automobile accidents, and they see a murder, or somebody tries to kill them. I mean, it's on and on. So don't think this is just a non-civilian problem. You can turn your back on it. So again, Reverend Cynthia, I'm glad you brought that up. It's very important. And I'll tell you, I've said this, what I just said on the air here, to researchers, psychiatrists, guys at Texas doing big time studies on this stuff, millions of dollars. And I stunned them. By telling them, you got to look at the background of some of these people. And they were like, wow. So this is an important issue. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. When we talk about PTSD, I like to call it PTSI. It's a post-traumatic stress injury. I don't have a disorder. I don't have an issue. I have an injury because of what happened to me. It's the same as a broken leg or a stubbed toe. It's an injury that was done to me, not a disorder or an illness.
Exactly. Your point is well taken. It's excellent.
Yeah. I was going to say, it sounds exactly, you agree with Al on the way that that's described.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I write about it, I actually write about it with PTSS, the second S being syndrome, because in the medical world, that's sort of more appropriate. But however, for dramatic import, I just heard something I really like, injury, because it certainly is an injury.
Yeah.
And people can understand that word. Syndrome, I don't maybe I'd even have to look it up. But injury, everybody knows what the hell that is.
Everybody, yeah, good point.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Now, you mentioned, Cindy, that dealing with your cannabis, using cannabis, you discovered the psychedelic end of things within your journey, and how did that come forward?
Well, like I said, even during my addiction, and I think it's one of the things that helped to save me and give me the willpower to get sober, is the fact that I used cannabis throughout that. And, I tripped on mushrooms and some LSD throughout that. So I had been using cannabis, I had gotten sober, and I went to a festival and somebody offered me mushrooms. And I got a little panicked about it because as I was like, whew, I'm a recovered addict. Can I do that? Oh my God. And then they explained the whole medicine thing to me, the fact that it's natural. It's, it falls under the same realm as cannabis, not as cocaine. And that made sense to me. So I enjoyed the weekend. I did some mushrooms and we had some fun. And then I started researching mushrooms. I started learning about microdosing in particular and how that can help help the brain find the right synapses and reform pathways and, help a person who has the injury I had find a better way to live. So I started microdosing, and just as cannabis, I got my little soapbox and I stood up on it and I waved my arms and I'm like, y'all gotta try this. And enough people heard me. And I'm not sure if you guys down in the States have heard of this documentary, but there was a documentary made here in Vancouver called Dosed. And the advertisements for Dosed were, it was supposed to be called Microdose Me, and they changed it to Dosed. And then the advertisements were all about how this woman addicted to heroin helped herself by using magic mushrooms. So people bought me tickets and said, you got to go see Cindy. You got to go see, you're just like this girl. You got to go watch this documentary. So I ran off and I watched the documentary. And throughout the documentary, we watched this beautiful woman who was a heroin addict. She was an active heroin addict, lived with her parents. She found sobriety, but she tried microdosing with mushrooms, and then she tried macrodosing with mushrooms, and she kept going back. And eventually she was introduced to a psychedelic medicine called iboga, which hails from Africa. And iboga is, it's the anti-addiction natural medicine. It really does work for helping people quit their addictions. And so we watched the movie and we learned about this medicine, and we watched these shaman work with this beautiful lady who's still sober to this day, by the way. And I knew at the end of the movie that I had to go find this medicine. A few months later, another documentary came out about it, and I was sitting there watching the second documentary, and I'm like, that's it. I'm bawling in tears. I have to find this medicine. So I just started going on Facebook, and everybody that appeared in either of these movies, I searched them on Facebook and I friended them, and I sent them a little bit of my story. And I'm like, please, 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 I need this medicine. It's screaming at me to come sit with it. And I eventually started talking to this one lady, and she said, you know what? Gareth Moxie in Vancouver is the man for you to go sit with. Just by talking to you, that is who you need to go sit with. And it was 1 year, 4 months, and 17 days after I saw the movie that I walked off the plane and Gareth picked me up. And my life changed. Because I was still, even with the cannabis and even with the mushrooms, my addiction was still there, and it was still screaming, and it was still going, I'm coming for you. And I had spent months and months and a couple of years just desperately, literally desperately grasping cannabis and grasping mushrooms and saying, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. And then iboga was there. So I went and I had a 7-day retreat where I sat with this beautiful medicine twice. And then they took me to another place where I sat with the medicine of the bufo, which is a toad. We call that 5-MeO. And to even put it into words, I got to go back to the little girl that was almost 5, who was first hurt. And I might get emotional, so I'm sorry. And I got to help her come out of the back of the closet that she was hiding in because she was so scared. Wow. During this beautiful spirit walk medicine, iboga, a lot of people in North America have heard of peyote, and they hear about how the indigenous people go for, 12 to 24-hour spirit walks. Well, iboga is very much the same way, but it's also a detoxer for the body. So this medicine took me, and I sat with my passed away mom, and I sat with my passed away ancestors, and they helped me get the first Cindy that was ever hurt to come out of the shadows. And she was brought to me, and she was scared of me at first because she didn't want the addiction. She didn't want the pain. And I told her that I hadn't used any of those addictive substances in a long time, and I'm on a healing path, and that she would help me greatly on that healing path if she would just trust me. And at that point in time, my 4.5-year-old self gave me a great big hug, and she just absorbed into my body during this spirit walk. And I woke up from a 24-hour walk in the spirit world, and my life was forever changed. And then when I sat with the 5-MeO, Bufo alvarius 5-MeO, it's nicknamed the God molecule. And it took me to meet God after I had done the spirit walk with iboga. And God hugged me, and God told me I was worth everything. And God told me that I am love, and I am to love myself from that point forward. And I have.
Good. And has the addiction genie on your shoulder gone away?
Oh, yeah. Long gone. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
The now when you did that spirit walk with the iboga and that, explain how that process goes. Like for me, for example, people talk about mushrooms. I just think about the old days. People just swallow back mushrooms, but now there's the whole therapeutic involvement in it with a therapist and the whole bit. For your experience in doing the iboga, what was that like as far as how was the setup?
Well, I had my facilitator Gareth and his partner Blair, and they hire a nurse to come in because iboga can be hard on the body, and they want you looked after until they know that you've peaked and you're coming back down. So I had 3 people there looking after me, and when you start taking iboga, you take it in small doses. So if your dose is supposed to be 1 gram, you take 100 milligrams at a time every 20 minutes, because they can decide that, you're at 700 and that's enough for you, because they watch your heart rate and what on your blood pressure. And if that falters beyond where they believe it should, that's it. You've had enough, which is why the nurse is there. So
are you ingesting this?
Yes, they have the iboga. Is the root of the iboga plant. So the root of the iboga plant holds all of the medicine. So they extract the medicine out. It's a powder form, and they just give it to you in capsules. And so I took the first couple of doses, and I was told that I was going to feel heavy. I would want to lay down, and eventually my eyes would want to close. And once they close, that's when the spirit walk starts. And they were right. I felt heavy. We were watching a documentary. I laid down on the couch. And then I decided it was time to close my eyes. And when I closed my eyes, I was in a completely white room. Have you ever watched those, like a show, and somebody goes into their head, and they end up in like this white space. Everything's white, and it's almost like they're floating. That's where I was. And I heard the spirit of iboga say to me, "Hey, Cindy, I heard you came here to heal." And I stood there looking around going, "Yeah, I did. That's why I'm here." And then all of a sudden, this man's arm and hand came out in front of me, and the hand was there. And he said, "Okay, take my hand." and we're going to go heal. So I tentatively reached out and I took his hand. And at that second, I was on the back of an eagle flying, as it turned out, over Mexico and these beautiful, lush lands. And it was my mother that was the eagle, and she was showing me the world. And it turned out she was showing me my future. Yeah. And, it just went on from there. And when I woke up, like when I came back to my body, when I woke up, depending on how you want to look at it, I mean, I thought that I was gone for 2 hours at most, and at that point in time, it's been 17.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
well,
so
and again, I get the same effect with the Hershey bar.
That's good.
Good.
It's way cheaper than my iboga.
Yeah, I was looking. Damn, you're a cheap date.
Exactly. So this first experience that you've gone that you went through, that obviously led on to other experiences, to the point that, as you've got yourself listed there, medicine facilitator for psychedelics.
Yeah.
So what you experienced was so powerful that you had to share and help others.
It was so profound for me that the soapbox was no longer any good. I needed to learn how to work to be in service to others. Because if I can find this healing, a woman who was running a trap house, and my whole job was to get people addicted to cocaine so they would come and spend money and hang out. Like, that was my job. And I've come from that to wanting to help people heal. And after finding my healing, I want to share the tools that I have discovered, and I want to share the pathways that I have discovered, because if I can come from that to this, anybody can take the step and change their lives.
Well, you don't need to beat yourself up so much. I can tell you there's a lot of people out there who are worse than you. I mean, look at politicians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
There's right now, there is I believe it's the VA down in the US is doing some research on psychedelics. So they've just been given the permission to do it. So
so don't you worry about flashbacks or side effects like that, where you're heading down the road or you're driving and all of a sudden you're hallucinating again?
Flashbacks are, if we could have a reefer madness about psychedelics, they'd be shoving flashbacks down our throat.
Oh, all right. That explains why I've never had one. I thought that would be great. 2 trips for the price of one.
Yeah. I do work with a medicine called 5-MeO-DMT, which comes from the Bufo alvarius, toad, which is from the Mexican and Arizona and Sonora desert. Now, this medicine, it can cause, we call them reoccurrences, where for 5 or 10 minutes, you'll feel like you're in medicine. You're not, but you have that feeling. But we warn people about that. It can happen up to about 5 to 6 days after, but it doesn't happen until about 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, it's one of those things that happens like when the mind is resting, that the medicine will go, oh, well, we need to finish our trip. Yeah, so it's not one that you need to worry about, that you're going to drive down the road and all of a sudden be in medicine, right? It's, yeah.
Or 5 years later down the road, you find yourself in a grocery store candy aisle.
Yeah.
Oreo cookies is where Casper would be. He'd be looking for the Oreos. Now, do you do anything at all with therapeutic mushrooms, as opposed
other than
to
psilocybin?
Well, anything. I have a psilocybin background that was very positive. A quick story. I had what they call, these guys have heard it, but it's worth repeating. I had what they call these headaches, these migraines. They're awful. They're cluster headaches, they call them. And I describe, people say, what's the pain like? I said, somebody sticking a knife in my eye and turning it around. I had so much pain at times that I'd pass out from the pain. they put me on all kinds of little things, and nothing worked. I carried around an oxygen bottle for about 20 years. The oxygen, if I got it into me quick enough, seemed to help somehow. And then a very famous cannabis doctor named Ethan Russo and I were working together, and he'd been familiar with my problem, and he said, "Al, I think if you get a hold of some psilocybin mushrooms and you take them immediately as the aura before that pain gets there, but it's something like your body is just, this is going to be bad." He said, when you get there, he says, get those things down. He recommended that I chew them up real good and swallow them with grapefruit juice, something to do with the acid in the grapefruit juice. Yep. And I did that about 24 years ago, and I've never had another one.
Wow.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a friggin' miracle. Now, the backstory on that is he called me back, and as we were talking, Ethan, it worked. Holy shit, he says. I thought it might, but so he was in Missoula, Montana at the time, and he had a female doc friend of his that had the same stuff I had. And he said, "You got any more of them mushrooms?" I said, "Yes." "Can you send them to him?" "Yes." I sent the mushrooms. USPS delivered them. They didn't know. So I talked to her. She tried them. She called me back and she failed. It did not work. But another set of circumstances came up. She tried them. It worked. And I haven't talked to her now for 10 or 12 years, but she never had another headache either, too. Now, this was not, just to the audience, this is not something that I was on some sort of trip when this was going on. Hardly. My body was fighting off or about to fight off this incredible pain. If you're in that kind of pain, you ain't in no trip. You're into the pain. And so this mushroom, like Cindy said, it resets something in my brain. And boy, am I glad it did.
Amazing.
So please, folks, this is, and you're right, Al, down here in the United States, the Veterans Administration is heavily into giving mushrooms to vets, all kinds of vets doing all kinds of problems, to see how therapeutic it is. And they're not finding a lot of problems. They're seeing a lot of positives. They haven't come out with that yet. But if we were seeing problems, that'd be out.
Yeah, you've got some universities down in the United States that have been doing research with cannabis and not cannabis, well, cannabis, yes, but with mushrooms and 5-MeO and ayahuasca for fighting, whatever, mental injuries somebody might have. Up here in Canada, they are still, ketamine is becoming a large medicine that people are working with. And psilocybin is one that is really starting to rear its head. Although here in Canada, people have to get approved to legally do them through what we call the SAP program. They said, this program is amazing. It's going to be 30 days to, for you to either hear that you have been or have not been accepted into the program. And Al and I know people that are going on years of waiting for their answer still.
Exactly.
I have a question. Sure. And it sounds like an easy question, but when I get done asking it, you'll understand when I say age restriction. Now, I'm not talking so much about being 20 years old or 21 years old to use this. I'm talking about I'm almost 100, and if I did something where I laid down and I started flying around on my mom's back and having a conversation with my dead relatives, I think when I woke up, I would call the local nursing home and have myself committed. So, do you have a health restriction or an age restriction? Like, no, you're too old for this, or you're not healthy enough for this, or
there are health things. When I went to go do iboga, I had to go through medical testing. I had to have my heart tested. I had to have my liver tested. and they had to have all of that information. I had to be physically healthy enough. They don't necessarily have an age restriction. If somebody shows up, the first time I went, the lady coming after me was 86 years old and had been on opiates most of her, probably about 25 years. And she had decided that she didn't want to live the last month, 2 months, 5 months, 10 years of her life high. So she came to iboga and came to the same, and she came up from the States, actually. So she came to the same retreat center that I was at to help her become sober. And I followed her story through my friends, and it worked. They had to microdose her. It took about 2.5 weeks. And they helped her wean off her opiates and then discharge them from her body. And when she went home to the United States, she was no longer going through withdrawal, and she was no longer addicted.
Is this Central America, Mexico? Where are we?
Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada is where I go to the medicine.
Now, you also, yeah. Now, you've gone, as you mentioned, you've got your medicine facilitator, psychedelics. You help people. You would have had to go through some sort of training. I know most people might think you went through college or university or whatever to get this, but you, what route did you go? And I understand it's not that way.
Well, it's I took a course through. There's a retreat in Mexico that has, I think, all said and done, there was about 30 odd teachers that contributed to this. And we're talking people who have worked with the medicine for a long time. And they put together an education package, and it was a 9-month education package. And I've got a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from a long, long time ago. And when I went through this 9-month course, I honestly, when I talk about the information that we were given, it was probably the equivalent to 2 years of heavy university work. So it was amazing. They taught us so much. We learned the history of the medicine. We learned about the toad. We learned about, we just learned about so much, and we learned how to facilitate it and what the risks are and what to watch out for and what the contraindications are. I call myself a medicine facilitator. And they really taught us, everything that they could about this beautiful medicine. We finished off with going down to Mexico because the retreat, the school, is in Tepoztlan, Mexico, which is very, very close to the southern border of Mexico. Beautiful area. We spent 2 weeks down there where there were 16 students. And we went through the 2 weeks of medicine together. So we had to learn how to serve, and they wanted us to experience the medicine in all the different ways, because you can take it in different ways. You can use it as a suppository. You can vape it. You can take it intranasally. You can put it under your tongue. So we had to do all the processes so we knew what they were. I've worked with enough with 5-MeO at this point in time that I had done all of them. So we did 8 ceremonies while we were down there, which is crazy. There was a lot of healing that went on there. And then we graduated at the end of it, and I came home, and I'm working with a mentor now, setting up my ceremony room, my retreat room. And I hope that, by the end of April, I will be up and running and accepting my first participants into my home.
What's the downside
of 5-MeO?
Yes.
If it's worked with properly, there really isn't one.
Okay.
But it is a medicine. The downside of the medicine is that Mike Tyson and Joe Rogan both did it and started screaming it to the world about how amazing it is and how everybody's got to go do it. And now everybody is running to the Sonora Desert and killing toads. So that's kind of the downside to it.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. it's a, you said it over and over. I'm sure you meant to. It's a medicine.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to drill that home too. It's a medicine. It's not a toy.
Yeah. It was a very intense course because of what can happen. I mean, the biggest thing with the medicine that I have chosen to work with as a facilitator is the preparation for it. On my part, I would spend 3 phone calls. You'd have an intake form. I mean, I'll probably ask you 20 times, what do you take for medicine? What do you do? What's your home life like? I mean, I try to make sure that I know the person very well and that there are no contraindications there, because 5-MeO works on our serotonin receptors. So if somebody came to me and they're on a bunch of antidepressants, I've got to send them away and tell them to go work with their doctor and wean off. Because if they're on those heavy antidepressants and they take 5-MeO, it can cause psychosis or it can kill them. So that's why we have such an intensive course heading into being able to serve this medicine, because it is so powerful. I mean, it is the strongest entheogen known to man at this point in time. And if you don't have the respect, and if you don't have the right set and setting, and if you don't have the education to make sure your participant is looked after, it can be a very dangerous medicine.
Well, yeah, death can be a nasty side effect.
It is a terrible side effect. Yeah. So that's why we go through the training, is because I want to make sure that somebody coming in is prepared to take this medicine. And one of the things that this medicine is very famous for is we get an ego death or an ego dissolution. So what we mean by that is we get to a point where we literally become part of everything, and everything becomes part of us. You are part of the consciousness, part of the oneness. And while you're out there doing that, my job is now to look after your human body that is here in front of me, because, once we've now approved you to take the medicine, you don't know what your body is doing when you're gone. When you're in, when you are now walking with the medicine, your body, you could vomit and not know. You could decide you're going to stand up and you don't know. You could fall. You can bang your head. So that's where having an educated facilitator, especially one that has, basic first aid training, is there to look after you while you're gone. And then when you come back after the ceremony, there is what we call integration, which is an extremely important part.
George Harrison, this is about LSD, but it's still about a psychedelic, once said that you should take psychedelics 3 times: once to understand the psychedelic, once to understand yourself, and once to understand the universe.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And that's true. I remember when I was doing psychedelics, it was really a profound thought, which you would think you would have just on your natural, about how huge the universe is and how small you really are. And, as a speck of sand and the big stars and planets and blah, and that you're here and alive, and you're like, wow, this is where, and you should have that already just by being alive. But when you drop psychedelics, all of a sudden your world does stop, and you realize, damn, there's Mars and there's me, and everything in between is just amazing. Whoa.
Yeah. On 5-MeO, you become one with Mars. Mars becomes one with you. And everything in between.
Now, when you call these ceremonies, from my understanding,
Yes.
Do each of these, like I see you got the list of iboga, psilocybin, Kambo, cacao. Do each of these ceremonies take like a minimum amount of time that someone who would be interested in going through a ceremony?
Well, as we know, psilocybin, if you're going to sit with a trip setter, psilocybin is a 6 to 8 hour, journey. I work with a medicine called Hapé, which is a tobacco snuff, and it's a 20-minute journey or ceremony.
Well, sure.
Cacao is about 90 minutes. Kambo is about an hour, about 60 minutes. NN-DMT and 5-MeO are, anywhere between 15 to 60 minutes. Yeah.
Good. Well, you just didn't know, because you you had mentioned like a 17-hour journey there when you first got talking
Yeah,
about it.
iboga can be a very long journey.
Yeah. Because knowing that can help somebody decide, because they think that they're going to be spending 24 hours out and going through their journey, their spirit walk, that they might think it's a bit, too much. And
yeah, well, like I mean, and iboga, you're not just when you go to a retreat with iboga, you're there for 3 to 10 days. So you're paying for the retreat as well. So you're not just paying for the medicine, and you need to have a nurse. So they pay for the nurse to come in. So you're looking at a $5,000 to $10,000 Canadian journey.
Wow.
With 5 MEO, somebody can come to my house. They can drive to my house, and they can be here for 60 to 90 minutes. And when they leave, they can drive home. It's out. The ceremony is done, and you're able and legal to drive. It's one of the reasons I picked to work with this medicine over iboga, because they were both very profound for me. And people are more apt to come in and go, okay, well, I got 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
You take $5,000. You take $5,000 out of my wallet without taking any drugs. I'm going to hallucinate.
$5,000 in your wallet. We don't have to worry. Another chance. Well, listen, Cindy, this has been amazing, and your story is intriguing and inspiring, and you're the kind of person that we like to have on the show. That you're a patient. You took great pains, and you come out the other end really well, and you're helping people. I mean, shit, that's about all there is. So before we let you go, we don't want to keep you from saying anything you want to say. Information about how to get a hold of you, or anything you just want to leave with us as a message or anything.
Well, I mean, if you want to get a hold of me and talk about any of the medicines I work with or medicines I don't work with, and maybe I can help you find a facilitator, you can find me through the PACE radio network. Very easy to get a hold of me. You can just send the network a message, and if I don't see it, Al Graham will definitely make sure that I get it. My website is still being built. That will, be coming soon. And when that comes, I will be able to share that. And if I were going to leave you with anything, I usually start my speeches. There it is, though. When I've been invited to speak at some places, I grew up being told that cannabis was a gateway drug that was shoved down my throat, and reefer madness. And one thing I've learned is in that wording, gateway drug, they had one word correct, one word wrong. Cannabis is a gateway. It is a gateway medicine. It is a gateway to finding happiness. It is a gateway to finding health. It is a gateway to finding beauty in this world again. And getting up on my soapbox, whether you decide to use it or not, it is a beautiful medicine. And to give it a chance, and to maybe let you take it in a direction, or maybe let it take you in a direction to find more healing, as it did for me. Life has become beautiful, and life has become blessed.
Yeah. For anybody who wants to hear more what Cindy's doing and helping people, as she mentioned, you can get a hold of her through the network. But you can also tune into Cindy every week on The Mushy Moment with her and her co-host, joint host. Don't forget to take a toke. I said joint. And Steve Mathers. The two of them are on there. They're doing a great job. Lots of people are watching and listening. As you can see, there's the radio end of things, and the information on Cindy, and you can see some of their guests that they've had in the past. So check her out there every Tuesday afternoon, right, Cindy?
Tuesday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern.
There you go.
And it has been a real trip to have you on the show.
Oh, this has been great, guys. Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here.
And Al Byrne, before you say so long, farewell, bye-bye, like the musical with all the little kids running away from World War II, why don't you let them know about your book again?
You're muted, Al.
You're muted. You're still
I'm
muted.
sure what I said was,
Oh, there
I'm
you
sorry.
go.
Yeah, I'm sure what I said was wonderful, and it's so good I can't remember. But I think I said, Reverend Cindy, thank you. Very informative. Again, inspirational. Set a great example, and you're doing good work. You know, I'm glad you and Al keep working because you got to be part of it. That's anyway. So then I wrote a book. It's about cannabis. It's not no mushrooms, just cannabis. It's about how medical cannabis came to be part of the conversation in the United States, then the world, and from conversation to reality that we have now, which is somewhere on the order of 30 countries around the world, industrialized countries, England, Spain, France, Canada, have cannabis in their pharmacopoeia, meaning that their doctors, nurses, veterinarians can use cannabis legally as a medicine, and they're studying it. And that's another thing. My book points out that cannabis is likely the most studied plant in the history of the world. Regardless of what you hear from the politicians, I will tell you they're all wrong. Read all about it in the book. It's an informational book. It's a history book, and I think anybody interested in this subject should have it in their backpack. Thanks for watching our show, though. We're old guys. We're geezers. You see that? We bring on lovely young ladies, though, every once in a while, and spice everything up. So keep with us.
I know that every hour that I'm awake, I'm always involved in a joint study of marijuana. That's for sure.
Yeah, I bet. I can imagine that.
Absolutely. And I want to thank Al Graham for being our technical assistant and our joint host.
You're welcome,
on the big broadcast as well. And why don't you remind them about the Pace Radio Network up in Jananda.
All right, Pace Radio Network, paceradio.net, cannabis and psychedelic programming 7 days a week. We get started with the VAC, the Veterans Action Council broadcast that we do Sunday nights. Cindy's got her psychedelic show on Tuesday afternoon. We've got news in there as well. And Saturdays you can catch back-to-back nonstop cannabis and psychedelic programming on Saturdays for Rerolled Saturdays.
And I do want to remind you at home to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Share us with your friends. And I do also want to reiterate, when you do psychedelics, it is interesting how amazing you realize how small we are in the big grand scheme of things, which is why I always count myself very blessed to have people tune in and watch all of my friends and I tell the whole world how important it is to take time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for hemp. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, time for hemp.
Time for Hemp is a Pace Radio Network content provider.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.